So,
We're live.
all right.
Hello, and welcome to Ask an Archaeologist. I'm Nico Tripsevich, the host of today's show. Ask an Archaeologist is a series of live-streamed interviews co-hosted by the Archaeological Research Facility and the Phoebe A. Hearst Museum of Anthropology at UC Berkeley for Cal Week 2020. Each day at 11 and 2, we will interview a UC Berkeley archaeologist and answer audience questions. If you have a question to ask, please go to the website Slido or sli.do and type in Ask ARF, A-S-K-A-R-F, one word, and then click join and you can type your question there. I'll remind you about this link partway through the interview. So delighted today to interview Professor Kent Lightfoot on the subject of archaeology and the proposed interpretive trail at Fort Ross State Park, Historic Park in Northern California. Welcome, Kent.
It's a great privilege to be here, Nico. Thank you very much.
Welcome. So Kent teaches in the anthropology department at UC Berkeley. He specializes in the study of coastal hunter-gatherer peoples, culture contact research, and the archaeology of colonialism. Well, Kent, perhaps we could start with a background on your work at Fort Ross.
That would be great. Well, first of all, again, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak today about some of the work we're doing at the Fort Ross State Historic Park. And I think it's a great topic for us to talk about, many of us who are sheltering in place during this coronavirus outbreak. I myself, and I think many of you, were probably tired of looking at the walls of our house. And many of us are yearning to get outside to experience the beauty of California. So today what I want to do is take you to one of the most spectacular landscapes in the Golden State, and that is the Sonoma County coast and Fort Ross State Historic Park. It's an incredible place, given its scenery, wildlife, history, and people. And I have a few slides, Nico, that I want to show. So I'm going to put up the shared screen here. And how's that look, Nico?
Very good.
So, Nico, do you kind of right now, you're looking at this and you're kind of feeling the cool sea breeze? Do you see the waves crashing down below? Sea lions, do you hear them barking in the distance? Nico, we're transporting ourselves up north to Fort Ross State Historic Park. So what I want to do is just take a few minutes today to update you on the construction of an interpretive trail at Fort Ross and the important role that archaeology has played in its development. The official name of the project, and you can see it on this slide here, is the Fort Ross State Historic Park Cultural Trail Project. And if you Google this name, you'll get a very nice website that's been set up by California State Parks. And the Cultural Trail Project is an outgrowth of research and collaboration between a number of different groups and institutions. Of course, California State Parks is a key player, and the key organizer I just want to thank is Leslie Hartzell and a whole series of great people at California State Parks, and the Fort Ross Conservancy with their CEO, Sarah Sweedler, and again, a really great group of people to work with. And also we work closely with the Kashaya Band of the Pomo Indians. And I want to particularly thank Reno Franklin, Dino Franklin, Lauren Smith, and Otis Parrish for all their help in this trail project. And here at UC Berkeley, the trail project's been pushed along by Roberta Jewett and myself over a number of years. And also Sarah Gonzalez, who was one of our one of our really stellar PhD students, and is now an associate professor at the University of Washington. So Nico, let me just start with a little background on Fort Ross. Then we'll talk about our archaeological research for a few minutes. I'll then talk a little bit about the trail system, and then we'll open up for questions, if that sounds good.
That sounds great, Kent.
All right, so let's go with a little history lesson here in California. And looks like this one's not moving forward.
Sometimes there's a little delay with Zoom.
Is there? Yeah, let me pull up
forward keys.
Yeah, let me go here with. I knew the minute I made it, we were going to go into the, how are we doing there? All
All
right.
right. Yeah. There we go.
I knew as soon as we moved into the higher tech stuff, there would be a problem. But thank God we've got Nico and Katie helping me out today. So let's talk about Fort Ross. So this is a 1827 illustration of the Ross colony. It was the first mercantile colony in California, established by the Russian American Company, 1812, and then it went through till 1841. And it was founded in the heartland, as you can see, and if you can see my pointer here, of the Kashaya territory. And here you can see the southern Pomo, Coast Miwok, central Pomo, their territories. And there were three primary economic activities. They were hunting sea otters and other marine mammals, and then trading the pelts to China for goods. For example, they were able to obtain porcelain, teas, spices, textiles, which were then traded back into the Americas and into Europe. And the Russian American Company, who established the colony, made a very, very good profit off of this. What's interesting is they brought down from their northern colonies in the North Pacific a number of Alaskan natives to hunt sea otters and other sea mammals. And they were primarily from Kodiak Island and Prince William Sound. The second major activity was agriculture. You know, they were growing crops, they had livestock, and they were trying to provide food for their North Pacific colonies. And then the third was their mercantile operation. They produced and fixed durable goods at the colony, which they then traded to Spanish California, in fact, to the Franciscan missionaries for foodstuffs raised in the missions. And that was all shipped up to, again, the North Pacific, to the colonies up north. They hired Kashaya Pomo, Coast Miwok, Southern Pomo people as laborers. And what developed was the first multi-ethnic colonial community in California, outside of course, Spanish-held territory to the south. And it was comprised of Russians, Creoles, which were a special class of people that the Russian American Company defined as people who had ancestry, Russian ancestry and Native ancestry, Alaskan natives and Native Californians. And there were also people from many other homelands. So that's kind of our background, Nico, in terms of just Fort Ross itself. And then in terms of the archaeology, it's been fantastic to work up here. And we've really been blessed to work here. And Roberta Jewett and myself, we've been working here since the 1980s. And we work in collaboration with California State Parks, the Kashaya Pomo tribe, and the Fort Ross Conservancy in a lot of our work. And the works involve really three broad temporal dimensions. One's just the lifeways, the cultural practices of the Kashaya Pomo people going back more than 8,000 years, which is just fascinating. And then the Russian colony of Ross itself from 1812 to 1841, we've done quite a bit of work on that. And then the post-Fort Ross years, you know, the late 1800s, early 1900s with the development of some of the ranches, the William Bennett's Ranch and the Call family ranches. And the one continuity throughout this long, fascinating history of this beautiful place, it's been the Kashaya Pomo people. And many of them still live today a short distance to the north at Stewart's Point on tribal land. Now, scientific archaeology at Fort Ross started in the 1940s, in fact, with our very own Adam Treganza from UC Berkeley. Most of this work really focused on the Fort Ross or the Ross Stockade complex that I'm showing you here. And most of this, and you can see down here, this is a picture of what the stockade looks like today that you can visit. It's based primarily on reconstructions, buildings carefully reconstructed based on lots of archaeology and archival documents. The one building that is actually still original that you can visit is the Rotchef House, built in around 1836. Beyond the stockade complex, that's where we've done most of our work, Nico. This is where the majority of the Russian colonists, the Alaskan Native, and Native Californians lived and worked during that period of 1812 to 1841. And of course, this is all Kashaya territory, and many of their ancestral sites are here as well. So our goal has been to better understand the economic and social political organization of the colony and various residential communities associated with it. We provide information from California State Parks interpretive programs. That's what we do. And our work has been facilitated by some really great state park archaeologists, Brett Parkman and Glenn Ferris. And what we've been able to do is provide some field work, laboratory opportunities for a number of our undergraduate students, graduate students, faculty, and staff archaeologists. And again, since the late 1980s, we've been working here. And here you can see some of our students working with some of our key Kashaya, Pomo, Reno Franklin, Otis Parish. Now, in terms of some of the key sites, what I want to emphasize is that in doing the work, the Archaeological Research Facility has been really, really important. And not only Nico has been important in terms of providing us and helping us with a lot of technical and equipment, but also publications. Publications from this research are available free from the Archaeological Research Facility website.
That's
and
right.
In fact, they have a great publication series of contributions of the Archaeological Research Facility, University of California, Berkeley. And Nico, we should make a plug right here.
Definitely.
This is an important thing. Anything you want to say, Nico, about that?
Well, we have recently re-released the first 2 volumes of the Fort Ross monograph series, and we, in conjunction with the new publication of the Matini Village volume, with Kent Lightfoot and Sarah Gonzalez, as authors.
So yeah, no, it's been really it's fabulous, a fabulous publication series, and again, free, downloadable. So check out the Archaeological Research Facility, their website.
Yeah, so it's arf.berkeley.edu, and you can download the PDF, or you can order the printed book for a nominal amount. It's full of color.
And some of the sites I'm going to talk about are actually in those publication series. What I'm going to do, Nico, is just show you very quickly a few of them, because again, we don't have that much time. But for example, the Native Alaskan Village site, which is in front of the stockade, we did some really I think interesting work that took place there, as you can see here, and you can see the map of the site. Here it is, the stockade. Here's where we were working. Very, very rich archaeological materials. We had PhD students. Tom Wake here is now a professor down at UCLA, who did their dissertation work. A variety of different interesting, provocative artifacts, some Kashaya Pomo, some of the Alaskan natives and their maritime technology they brought down. We've got Russian ceramics, we've got English ceramics, Chinese ceramics, a really, really interesting archaeological assemblage.
So are some of those from northern mammals that perhaps came with the Aleutians?
Most of them we think were probably actually formed or actually produced right there at Fort Ross. Tom Wake, who, if we go back to this slide here, he did work where he's actually able to show the full production process of them making some of these tools on, and these would include these sea otter points. These are a series of sea otter points that were used for hunting.
Those are made from bone.
Yeah, these are all made from bone. Yeah,
local.
Yeah, we think mostly local bone. And then this is some of the beautiful etched work that the Kashaya Pomo did.
Beautiful,
yeah. So again, you can get a sense of that.
Kent, let me take a moment to remind our listeners and viewers that they can go to pose questions by going to the website Slido, sli.do, type Ask ARF, and click join, and you can send some questions to Professor Lightfoot here online.
You bet. Great stuff. Thanks, Nico. Hey, so another project is just here in this is what we call the North Wall Project. This is something that Sarah Gonzalez, who you can see here, we're doing some soil resistivity work. Again, some of this is the Archaeological Research Facility. Here you can see Sarah, Dr. Gonzalez here, and a pestle. This is a place where a number of buildings were established outside the stockade, and it looks like they had Russian and it looks like Native California people who were living in some of these structures. And Sarah's dissertation went in and looked at that. We've also done a number of studies of Kashaya Pomo villages in the area. This is Otis Parrish, one of our key Kashaya scholars, who's showing a hopper mortar to a class. Other areas we've worked, the industrial neighborhood. This is Dr. Jim Allen. He was, again, another grad student here who did his PhD. He's now the executive director, Institute for Maritime Archaeology. But was working on the area where they had blacksmith shops, cooper shops, and here he's uncovering a stoving oven that was used for bending timber for producing the first ships ever built in California. And these are the series of brigs, schooners, and barges that were built there at Fort Ross. And we have good archaeological evidence of some of that.
Now, do you think they were assembled right there or down at the Bodega Bay?
No, we think we've actually found the shipyard itself. Amazing. And that's a much longer lecture. Yeah. But yeah, that is an area where we think they actually had the shipways. And then we've got where they had some of the carpenter shop, and then where they were doing some of the bending of some of the timber through the stoving oven. And a lot of that was Dr. Allen's research.
I see. Oh, hey, Kent, we have a few questions coming in for you.
Okay.
First question, where can the public see the archaeological materials found at Fort Ross?
So the materials there are materials actually at the visitor center at Fort Ross State Historic Park. And that would be the place where you can really see some of that. And then I think as part of this, and we'll talk about the trail system, some of that will actually be, virtually, you'll be able to see some of these materials. We'll be able to really illustrate some of those. But they are up at the visitor center at the Fort Ross State Historic Park, which is a really great place to go and see and learn about the history.
Yeah, I stopped by there with my family when my daughter was about 4, and it was perfect. Great place to bring kids.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah.
So the second question, the cross-hatching designs on some of the artifacts, does it have any significance to the Kashaya Pomo?
It's something that I think we feel, I mean, I shouldn't really speak, it's really some of our Kashaya scholars and some of the elders, but I feel that it was really done by some of the women. And it's part of some of the designs that they used, and some of those may have actually been incorporated in some of the baskets and things. In terms of its, significance, spiritual significance and things like that, we probably need to turn to one of our native scholars to really talk about that. But great question.
Yeah, good. And we have a question here from Gordon Jewett.
Oh my God! Don't take that one.
Well, he noticed that I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt in your honor, Ken.
That's good. That's good.
What do you think the Zags' chances are in 2021?
I think if the Zags are back playing basketball, they're going all the way. All right. It's either the Golden Bears or the Zags. Okay. I mean, it's one or the other. That's my prediction.
All right.
All right. Now, Nico, the last site I want to talk about is one that you know, and this is the Slobodov. This is what they call the Russian village over on this area of this Voznensky. This was a painting done in 1841, and Nico was involved in this along with Glenn Ferris, Scott Byron. We're doing some ground penetrating radar. We're trying to locate the village. You remember that, Nico?
I sure do.
And we had a great field session, and we hope to have some more. This is some of the output that Nico helped us with, along with Glenn Ferris and Scott Byron and others who were up there, Roberta Jewett, a series of us who were working on that. So I think that gives you a taste of the archaeology, Nico. And then let's just, you want me to talk a little bit about the trail system, or?
Yes, please do.
Basically the trail system is fairly quickly here. It's a 2.8 trail that's being established. Gary Shannon from California State Parks is the key person who's designing and really implementing this. And the goal of this trail is to take you, out to see some of this spectacular scenery in the Fort Ross area, as well as to experience a flow of history that begins with the ancient history of the Kashaya going back 8,000 years, and then continues with the Kashaya's interactions with the Russian American company, highlighting in terms of this multi-ethnic community of Russian Creole people and Alaskan natives. And then also talking about the later ranch period. The trail will feature 23 proposed interpretive stops, and you can see each one of these red points is a stopping point where you can experience the landscape of the Kashaya Pomo and the history of this great area. And the interpretive program will include a cutting edge trail application, which will support augmented and virtual reality on your phone or mobile device. I know, Nico, this is your kind of stuff, man.
Oh,
and
exciting.
It's being developed under the direction of Nicola Licari at UC Merced, one of the professors, a colleague and friend down there. And with the assistance of Chico State University and Time Looper. And the final point I'll make, and we'll keep this open for questions, is there's really two loops. One is just what we call the West Loop I'm showing you here. And this really allows, I think, the visitors to look at and really understand traditional and contemporary Kashaya Pomo culture and lifeways. And there's a series of interpretive stops that really feature the Kashaya Pomo. And again, this is an area where ancestral sites as well as some of the more historic sites are located. And then the East Trail is over here. Here's the stockade. And then there's a series of trails that show you some of the neighborhoods of the multi-ethnic workers of Colony Ross. And through the virtual reality, augmented reality, they'll bring some of these to life and show you what some of these reconstructions look like.
So that sounds great.
When you're looking out across a landscape, you'll be able to see them, virtually.
Maybe hear some of the voices and the songs.
Yeah, and descendant communities and others. And so they'll bring that, basically trying to bring this really fantastic history to life through the virtual reality that I think allows you to still have all the beauty and the scenery in terms of people who just want to walk the trails. But for those that really want to take a deep dive into history, you'll be able, through your device, be able to really see and get a sense of that.
Yeah.
So
we got a question. Oh,
you bet.
Can I fire a question at you?
Yeah.
How can members of the public support Fort Ross? Through donations? Can members of the public volunteer?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of help that can be provided. I mean, the Fort Ross Conservancy is really important, and I think if you really have an interest in the history of Fort Ross and the cultural trail, I think you could sign up as a member. And of course, donations are always really happy to have that, especially, and you can earmark them for the cultural trail. And of course, California State Parks is a key, and support of California State Parks, I think, is really, really important. Of course, I think Archaeological Research Facility, the Hearst Museum, the Anthropology Department are also really important of support. Volunteers, I think once we get the trail system going, I think there will probably be some real need for people in terms of helping, in terms of docents and things like that, who could help out. We're not quite there yet, but I think we will be hopefully fairly soon.
Well, here's another question. Someone asks, will the app be something that you have to use at the park, or can you explore Fort Ross from afar?
I think it's both. As I understand it, it'll be done where the app will be available wherever you live. And if we're still sheltering in place,
yeah,
a couple of years from now, you'll be able to do it from there. And also, of course, if you're at the park itself, it'll be available and usable there. So both places, it's designed for both places. And in fact, there'll probably be one trail version that has kind of fairly short interpretive signage involved in the application. And then there's going to be a deeper dive one which really gets into some of the, I think, archaeology and some of the Kashaya Pomo and some of their stories and things like that. So I think it's going to be really a really fabulous interpretive program, and very much cutting edge, I think.
Yeah, I know Nicola Lercari did a project at Bodie.
Yes.
So this isn't his first.
No. He and
rodeo.
Leslie Hartzell work closely at Bodie, and so they're bringing that expertise to Fort Ross.
Mhm.
And so, and some of the team that was involved with that, with like Time Looper and some of that, Chico State and some of the others, they're bringing them with them. So they already have some experience with working with state parks and interpretation in state parks. And so it's yeah, really great to see that.
Yeah. So I see this large coastal plain, and it
Yeah.
makes me wonder: was it open like that? Was it burned? What was the ecological history?
Well, and when in historic times, when we start getting, the Russian American company and others in here, it was pretty open. I think they were using some of it for livestock grazing. A lot of the agriculture was actually done in this area, and there's probably be some down over here as well.
Yeah, it's very exposed out there.
Yeah. And the agriculture was never very successful at the Fort Ross itself. What the Russian American company eventually did is they established interior ranches along the Russian River. Of course, in some of the most fertile and some of where we have some of our really fine wineries today. And those were very productive.
That's right.
And it was a situation where the Russian American company was thinking of staying here, I think, which would have definitely changed the history of California had they decided to stay put. And they actually worked out an agreement in the late 1830s with Mexico to basically buy that land. And what happened is the Tsar of Russia did not ratify that agreement because he was still upset with the Mexican government, which had broken away from the Spanish government, where he had a number of relatives who sat on the throne. So it was not ratified by the Tsar. So as a consequence, the Russian American company was not able to expand out into that really fantastic Russian River area. And as a consequence, they decided to close down their operation in 1841. The sea otter yields had plummeted. They'd out hunted the area, over hunted the area, and they had moved on back to the North Pacific.
And then can you remind me when did Seward purchase Alaska from the Russians?
I think it was 1867, I think.
Okay, sometime later.
I think so. Don't quote me on that, and I'm sure we'll get somebody blasting us. But it was in that period of time, yes.
Yeah.
Is when. But it was still a Russian American company, 1840s, 1850s. They basically took everyone back up for the most part, back up to the North Pacific, where they still had their colonies. The Russian American company, when they left in 1841.
So you showed a map earlier with Pomo and Coast Miwok territories. Is this well within the Pomo area, or is it kind of borderland?
No, I mean, we can go back. No, it's heartland of the Kashaya Pomo if we go back. If you take a look at, so Fort Ross is basically right in this area, and this is the Kashaya territory. It's heartland, and this is the southern Pomo, and then down to the south is Coast Miwok, and then central Pomo are up here. In terms of just how these territories were defined at about the time the Russians and the American settlers started coming into this area. Yeah.
I recall that there's a larger sheltered port down in the northern Bodega Bay that was connected.
Yeah. So that was essentially the Russian port was here at Bodega Bay. And in fact, one of the first really ports, European ports in Northern California. And that Port Rumesteff was the name of that. And they had a wharf, they had warehouses and others. And that's where the ships would come in and disembark. The reason that they didn't go up to Fort Ross is because it's really treacherous if you have essentially sailboats, which is what these brigs were. And they had reefs that go offshore. And so in order to really do much there, they had to really offload things when they were anchored way offshore a little bit.
Yeah.
And so as a consequence, they used Bodega Bay as their main harbor.
So what was the appeal of Fort Ross if it was such an exposed location?
Yeah, it's been a question, I think, for historians and archaeologists for years why they selected it. I think, in part it was up north of the Spanish territory, the Presidio and San Francisco.
Yeah, Bodega may have been too close and
possibly a little close. And the other thing that the Fort Ross area has that Bodega Bay does not is it has lots of redwoods. And they built a lot of and you could see in the reconstruction of the stockade, a lot of it is wooden timber structure. It's Russian. And so they had all that forest was right there.
Yeah.
And Fort Ross today, if you go there, it's perched up on a pretty high, really coastal terrace cliff area, which, some historians think is pretty defensible if anybody was trying to get access to them.
Sure. Yeah.
But it's not the ideal place because it really didn't have a port established as part of it. Yeah.
Well, Kent, it's 11:30, so we're wrapping up here, but we have one last question from the internet I'd like to share with you. When you excavate there, where does the team live? Do you do all your analysis there or do you take it away?
So we live, again, one of the great, I think, benefits of working with California State Parks is they have group campgrounds. And there's a campground that was established at Fort Ross, which is called the Archie Camp, in fact, where a lot of the archaeological work and other kind of field work that gets done by scholars, that's typically where we'll stay. And it's a really nice facility, great bathrooms, great places to camp. And then most of the work, some of the like flotation and some of that takes place there, but a lot of it gets back at Berkeley, UC Berkeley, in laboratories that the Archaeological Research Facility oversees, the Anthropology Department oversees, and my own lab, the California Archaeology Lab. So yeah. And Nico has seen, I think, quite a bit of stuff from materials from Fort Ross in his time there at the Archaeological Research Facility.
That's right. Yeah, decades of work.
Yeah, well, and we appreciate greatly the great support of the Hearst Museum and the Anthropology Department.
Well, we sure appreciate your work there, Kent.
Oh yeah, you bet.
So
I'd buy you a drink if I could, Nico, but I'm sheltered in place here.
That's right. When this is over, I'll take you up on it. All right. Good. Well, in wrapping up here, I'd like to thank Kent Lightfoot and the listeners and the people who sent in questions. And I'd like to mention that our next and final Ask an Archaeologist this week is this afternoon at 2 p.m. We'll be hearing from Sarah Ann Knudsen on network analysis and museums-based research in Eastern Europe and the Arab world. So please join us then. Thanks again, Kent.
Oh, you bet. Hey, my great privilege, Nico. Thank you very much.
It's always great.
Thanks, Katie. I know Katie and Sarah behind the scenes. Thank them as well.
That's right. Okay.
All right. You bet.